In this video, we're going to have a brief recap of the meaning of area and perimeter and the formula for finding the area of various different polygons. An area is a defined space. Think about play areas, holding areas, waiting areas, places that you can go into, and that will help you remember that an area is a space which covers a certain surface. Perimeter, if we break down the meaning of the two parts of the words, becomes quite self-explanatory. The prefix peri means about, around or enclosing, and the suffix meter means measure. So perimeter literally means measure around the edge. We're going to look at the area and perimeter of rectangles first. I've drawn a grid with 4 rows of 3 squares. Each square is a metre by a metre. So the 4 rows, each is 1 metre high and 3 metres across. And that means we've got 12 metre squares. The grid covers an area of 12 square metres. So we can find the area of any rectangle by multiplying the length of the base by the length of the height. When we want to find the perimeter, remember we're measuring around the edge, when we're looking at rectangles, we can use a slightly shortened formula to help us. So in this case, the short sides of the grid measure 3 metres and the longer sides measure 4 metres. So I've got 2 lots of 3 metres, 2 lots of 4 metres, which if I add them together gives me a perimeter of 14 metres. So the distance around the edge of the grid is 14 metres. And the formula we use is 2a plus 2b equals the perimeter of a rectangle, where a is one side length and b is the other side length. The red triangle covers half the area of the grid. We can see it quite clearly that the diagonal splits the grid into 2 equal halves. So as the area of the grid was 12 metres squared, the area of the triangle is therefore 6 metres squared. But in fact, all triangles are half the area of a rectangle which has the same base and height. So looking at this rectangle on the left, this is a scalene triangle, a rectangle. It's a scalene triangle, not a rectangle, so all the sides are different lengths. And I have calculated here, and the area of this triangle is 10. Now, it's maybe not so obvious to see where the base and the height is. So I've chosen to select this edge here as the base of the rectangle. And the height of the rectangle is going to be to the height of the apex. So the rectangle with the same base and height as this triangle has an area of 20. So by multiplying the base by the height and then halving it, dividing it by 2, we get the area of the triangle. The formula gets written in many different ways. So here I've written half base times height. Sometimes it's written without the brackets. Sometimes it's written base times height over 2 equals the area of the triangle. They all mean exactly the same thing. Parallelograms have the same area as a rectangle with the same base and height. So if here is the base of my parallelogram, and just with a triangle, the height is from the lowest point to the highest point, so from the base to the highest. You can see it marked on this diagram here. So I've made a rectangle around my parallelogram, and I've drawn up perpendicular lines from each of these 2 corners. And you can see then that I've left with a rectangle in the middle and 2 triangles, and we can see from the diagram that these 2 triangles are equal in area. We know they have to be equal in area because we know that in a parallelogram these 2 angles are equal and these 2 angles are equal. So if you imagine this triangle slides along to this space here, we can see that the area of the parallelogram is the same as the area as a rectangle with the same base and height. In all of these shapes, it doesn't matter which side you select as the base, as long as you measure the height at 90 degrees to the base. So it's the base and the height are always perpendicular. If I choose this to be the base, I have to measure the height perpendicular to that side. If I choose this to be the base, I need to measure the height at a 90-degree angle up here. If I choose this side to be the base, I'm going to measure a perpendicular line which is going to have to cross a parallel line to the base at the level of the height. So as long as your base and your height are perpendicular to each other, you should have the right measurements.